The timing of this video is strange considering I just released a video about why I don't own a Lumix G9 Mark II, and now you're looking at one. I ended up buying one, and you may be asking yourself, well, what changed? Well, the price changed. Right now, B&H, along with a few other camera retailers, are discounting the Lumix G9 Mark II by $500, which, oddly enough, puts it right at that perfect price point for me, right around $1,500, taxes included, which I think is a great value for this camera. You get all the great features from the Lumix GH6, plus phase detect autofocus, as well as dynamic range boost that works all the time. There's a few small sacrifices you have to make to work with the G9 Mark II instead of the GH6, but honestly, in the grand scheme of things, they're little nitpicks that probably won't affect you too much. For me, I do miss some of those features, but I really appreciate the new features like the phase detect and dynamic range boost. To get this $500 discount, there are a few hoops you have to jump through, but honestly, it's not that bad. But before we get into the details of how to score that discount, this video is brought to you by Bocarola. You can use discount code STRAWNS for 20% off beneficial supplements like lion's mane, reishi, and mushroom gummies. Now, this $500 discount on the Lumix G9 Mark II is technically a trade-in bonus. So with B&H or any other camera retailer, you need to trade in a camera to get the $500 discount. However, it doesn't actually work like that in practice. You see, when you submit a quote saying, I have this old camera, I want to trade in, what's it worth? Just by doing that, they will send you the $500 code. So you don't actually have to trade anything in. If you don't have any old cameras you want to get rid of, fear not. Just say, I'm looking to trade in an old Canon 5D Mark IV, something like that. They'll send you the quote saying, yeah, that's worth maybe $800, $1,000, whatever it's worth. Plus, they'll give you the discount code for the Lumix G9 Mark II. So just to be crystal clear, you don't have to trade in anything to get the $500 value. You can use that code when you buy the Lumix G9 Mark II, and it'll reduce $500 off the price. So a camera that was $1,900 retail now becomes $1,400 retail. Plus taxes, you're looking at a $1,500 camera out the door. What's great about that is it's the perfect price point, especially if you're already in the Micro Four Thirds ecosystem. You have a bunch of lenses that maybe you don't want to get rid of yet, and you don't have to. You can still use a great brand new Micro Four Thirds camera with all the latest and greatest technology. Take it one step further, and if you do trade in or sell an older camera, now that price point is even lower, potentially zero, if you're actually looking to trade something in or sell it. For me, I'm trying to get a lot better at this. I hold on to equipment far too long because I always end up using it. I buy stuff that I like to use and it has value to me as a tool. But over the years, I've ended up collecting so many odds and ends. I still have my GH1.
I wanted people to know that this was not a 5D Mark II. This was not a 7D. This was something unique, something strange, something a little bit different.
I have all this old stuff I don't need anymore. I've got the long stand case here for stands and tripods. I've got a case for the Ronin stabilizer. We've got a grip kit. Back here, we've got another Pelican with lights in it. Here we've got another case for the Ursa Mini and its accessories. We've got the Phantom 4 Pro here, and a think tank here. You can put other backpacks and stuff up in that area, and there's still room for suitcases. And I'm really trying to be better about trading in the old whenever I do upgrade to something new. So when I'm buying a Lumix G9 Mark II, that's a perfect opportunity to sell my Lumix GH6, one of them, and potentially get $1,000, $1,100, $1,200, $1,300 potentially for a used GH6. Now, that's not breaking even, I'm still investing a little bit, but I use these tools to generate money anyway. So sometimes there's always going to be a little bit of a cost, and I'm okay with that because it's my business. If you're wondering how the Lumix G9 Mark II performs, I don't know yet. This is the first video I've shot with it. So you tell me, what's the phase detect autofocus like? What's the dynamic range boost like? I'm filming this in vlog, and I have to say, I'm really glad that they kept almost all of the features from the GH6 and put them into the G9 Mark II. Some of the hardware things like the flip screen and time code aren't there on the G9 Mark II, but there's other things that I really do appreciate. The battery door has a notch versus a porthole that they started using on the GH6, and I know no one else cares, this is my pet peeve, but with those porthole systems, there's certain power adapters that you can't run because the ends aren't detachable. With the notch, you just need to make sure the cord slots in and it works great. Super, super small nitpick, but I'm really glad they switched it back to the old system of having the notch instead of the porthole design they used on the GH6. I'm really curious to play around with the dynamic range boost. I ended up not using it all that often on the GH6 just because if I'm shooting vlog, I would have to run at ISO 2000 on the GH6 to use dynamic range boost, and I felt that it was just too noisy and not all that useful. More of a gimmick or something I would use in very specific situations rather than something I could run all the time. With the Lumix G9 Mark II, dynamic range boost is technically on all the time, so it's not even like a feature, it's just how the camera works. So you can't turn it on or off. From my understanding, it will activate and deactivate depending on the mode you're using, but in general, it's working all the time behind the scenes to give you that extra dynamic range, even at those lower ISOs. Consequently, the base ISO in vlog, which is what I shoot 99% of my footage in, is 500, where on the GH6, the base ISO was 250. So that will take some getting used to, needing to run heavier NDs sometimes, just because I've got that extra boost in my exposure that I'm not always used to. Aside from that, the camera pretty much operates exactly like a Lumix GH6 or any of the other modern Lumix cameras, even the full frame ones. They've really taken a nice menu system, a core set of features, and applied them across the board. I'm glad to see I can still shoot open gate with the G9 Mark II. I can use things like shutter angle. I can run a 4-channel XLR adapter, which is actually on the camera right now. And that's because I like to have reference audio. These newer Lumix cameras let you run 4 channels of audio, but the moment you plug a microphone in, those other 2 channels basically are nothing. You don't get the internal microphone scratch audio anymore, which I find as kind of an oversight. I really wish the moment you plugged in a microphone to the 3.5mm input, that you would still get the internal camera audio on tracks 3 and 4 or 1 and 2, however they wanted to do it. Unfortunately, you can't unless you have the XLR adapter. But the great thing about the Lumix ecosystem is that XLR adapter that worked with the GH5 and then worked with the GH6 now still works with the G9 Mark II. So I'm actually running it right now, getting 4 channels of audio. I have my wireless mic plugged into the receiver, which is into the 3.5mm input, as well as XLR input on those other tracks. So I have talent audio as well as scratch reference audio if I need it, or I could potentially run 4 different microphones all to one camera, which is incredible. I love that ability, so I don't have to worry about syncing things in post and tracking down a bunch of rogue audio files, finding the video clips that it matches with. It's all just synced right in the camera. Is it the best audio quality possible? Probably not. There are probably better, higher quality ways to record audio, but for the most part, it works great, and I don't think anyone really notices. Another random benefit of the G9 Mark II compared to the GH6, because those are the 2 cameras I'm most familiar with now, is that the GH6, I always ran a camera cage, but I found that the cages weren't as stable as I wanted. If you're familiar with rigging out a camera and putting a cage on it, you want multiple mounting points to the camera body so that you have absolute stability. It's not enough just to have 1 pin into the bottom of the camera. It's nice to have a 2nd or even 3rd anchor point to keep everything really secure. On the GH6, a lot of the cages that I found online would have the base mounting point and then 1 little safety pin to kind of secure it in there, but it was really never quite enough. With the Lumix G9 Mark II, Small Rig makes a cage that I'll probably show you in another video that has both the base mounting point as well as the side mounting point. So you have 3 points of stability right on the camera with the cage, and that's perfect peace of mind that the camera and the cage are gonna stay connected and nothing's gonna go anywhere or get loose over time. You still have trickle charging via USB-C on the G9 Mark II, so that's the exact same as the GH6. It won't actually keep the battery full all the time if the camera's on, but it will trickle charge, so you get quite a bit of extra use out of a battery internal if you plug in extra power to the USB-C, which I do almost all the time. Nice thing is when you turn the camera off, it does charge fully, so you can basically make it through a full day of filming as long as you're smart about when to keep the camera on and when to keep the camera off. Of course, I've lost things like CF Express Type B, so those cards won't work with the Lumix G9 Mark II, but I have plenty of fast SD cards that will work with the G9 Mark II, so I'm okay in that regard. It is really unfortunate to embrace some of these new memory cards that are better, in my opinion, than SD cards, but then to lose them on another camera is just kind of, that's the way it's been probably for 20 years, where you're always investing in new media just to match the next camera. I still have Panasonic P2 cards that I don't know what to do with because it's just the nature of buying memory cards. So all things considered, I think the Lumix G9 Mark II is a great value at that lower price point. $1,400 seems about right for the feature set, considering I can trade in or sell another camera and basically replace it in my arsenal, and I get this nice upgrade with all these new features without sacrificing too much. And again, you don't have to trade in anything to get that discount. I'll put a link in the description to where you can find it. You just have to fill out a couple text boxes and you're good to go. They'll send you an email, you'll get the code. But I do think this discount runs out at the beginning of March, so if this is something you want to do, you probably do need to act quick. Let me know, is $1,400 or $1,500 the right price point for the G9 Mark II for you, or is that still too expensive? Let me know, I'd love to hear it.